Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is good friend Sports Bear Fallica. Bear, I got to ask you, this is the first time that I've had you on since your big move to Fox, which you're now doing a bunch of things. It's awesome to see. You are all over all the Fox platforms right now. And I texted you over the summer. You were on your way to Paris, which casual, just sick brag. Just drop that in there. No big deal.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Can't talk right now, on the way to Paris. If I could text that to any human being ever, I would do that. I would actually just go out of my way to text people while I was on that flight to Paris. So you're good for that one. You're doing Big Noon Kickoff. You are hosting Bear Bets with Jeff Schwartz. I've got a bone to pick with you, though. You realize you are hosting a show with one of the few people in the industry who probably has more bear features than you.
Yeah, that is Dave, a little bit bigger, and he certainly has a lot more hair than I do as well. And we haven't gotten like the grumpy grizzle factor down yet, but in terms of body size and hair, he's definitely got me beat. But yeah, it was funny. I remember flying to Paris just beforehand, and you're reaching out. Can I rehash one thing I wanted to get into before we get into hardcore college football and everything here?
Let's do it.
When I was on with you a couple of years ago, you had asked me like if I could equate myself with a character on The Office, and I said I'm scared to admit this, but I haven't watched the series yet. I'm going to come back and answer that question now. I am definitely Stanley Hudson.
Yes.
That is who I am. That's me.
Okay, so you've gotten through. Did you go all the way through season 9?
I've gotten through like 5 seasons, I think, and then then summer came and Australia came, and I kind of got derailed. But just from the first few seasons, I'm absolutely Stanley.
Okay, so you've nailed that, and I'm proud of you. I can't believe that you remembered that. That just speaks to your memory.
I took it as a personal challenge to be like, all right, and the next time I hop on with him, I need to have an answer. I never like disappointing people. So yeah, there's your answer.
You are spot on. If you get to season 7 and you say to yourself, well, I wonder if this show is going to be any good without, I'm going to spoil it for you because the show's been out for 15 years.
Of course,
If you say to yourself, I wonder if this show drops off without Michael Scott, the answer is yes. So be prepared for that and know that if you're going to go through all the way through season 9, there are going to be some rough moments that you're going to hit. Judge the show based on who it is, seasons 1 through 7. I think it kind of peaks around season 4, season 5, and just know that there's a drop off, but it is still a darn good show that is worth watching all the way through.
We will, and the other thing which we just started watching the other night because my wife wanted to watch like the Jack Ryan on Amazon Prime. We started that and we're way behind, but that's actually pretty entertaining too. Certainly a different genre type show, but still pretty entertaining. Where she's a big Hunt for Red October, Fugitive, all those types of deals. So it's that Jack Ryan's totally up her alley.
I think your wife just likes John Krasinski. That's what it comes down to.
She probably, can you blame her?
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like going from Jack Ryan to The Office and back and forth is probably a bit surreal. You're like, wait a minute, what am I watching right now? This is
exactly.
Talk about transformation. That is a massive transformation.
And that's great. And that's great though, because so many times, like you heard people from like American Pie and stuff like that, you're wedged into that like character genre, and you can he's always going to be Stifler regardless of whatever he does. But for Krasinski to be able to like juggle those two and create really good niches, I mean that's awesome for him.
Absolutely, yeah. He is a phenomenal actor. Definitely a big time glow up. Okay, we can talk some actual gambling stuff, some actual college football. I'm thrilled for you with this move because it's allowed you to be able to dip into so many different things, and your interests expand way beyond just college football. Though that's obviously a big part of what you're doing here in the fall. I mean, you love the ponies, soccer, NFL, like you name it, you're all over it. I don't know that everyone knows how tight you and Herbie are because you guys started at ESPN together in mid-90s. What was his reaction when you told him that you were going to be leaving ESPN for Fox?
I think it was at first it was like, oh my God, that's awesome. And then I think as the season went on, and again, we had talked about like things in the past, and I remember having a conversation with him when I first like when things first started, like steamrolling towards me getting my own like spot on the show and personality, I became more and more on air. And he's like, "Oh, this is great. Like at some point, like you're going to be like maybe in a position where you may have to make a decision if you want to go elsewhere." So it was something that was on his mind and certainly my mind as well. So when this really started going in this direction, he was actually the first person I told outside of my wife that, like, I remember we were on a road and I was like, "Hey, you need to be the first to know that I'm gonna." Fox made me an unbelievable offer and gave me an unbelievable opportunity, and if ESPN doesn't match it, which I don't think they're going to, I'm going to go. And he was like, "That's freaking awesome. Good for you, man. I'm so happy for you." And then I think as the last couple of weeks of the season came into full, and like the highlight of our week, like has always been sitting on that bus on Saturday afternoon, 67 degrees, AC down, lights dimmed, 5 TVs on with games, food, quiet, and just like watching. It's like it was a glorified sports bar basically. And like there was one Saturday where it was just he and I, and he was basically just like, "Can't believe you're leaving." And it wasn't like "Oh, please don't go," or mad. It was just like, this is like one of the last opportunities we're going to have to kind of sit here and do this. But no, I went to the Kentucky Derby with him this year. I've chatted with him quite a bit, not about necessarily football specific related things, but just kind of normal barb. So we're still friends. We're going to be friends. And even though I'm not on game day and I'm not doing the Amazon stuff on Thursday night with him, he's still my guy, and as is Brees and Pollock and Coach and Pat and all. I mean, I will always that's been, I think, been the best thing about this is that I learned, like, there's always a little bit of concern, like, who are your friends and who are your friends because they're forced to be your friend because you work with them and you're on the road for 18 weeks throughout the year or whatever it is. And I've maintained contact and a friendly relationship with all of them. So it's good to see that my judgment and my impression that they actually were true, legitimate friends who were A, happy for me that I was getting this great opportunity, and B, going to stay friends was great.
You're going to see him this weekend. I mean, crazy that both of the shows are going to
Yeah.
be in Boulder. Have you made plans yet? What's dinner with Herbie and Corso going to look like?
I don't think we're going to get there. I think usually there's a nice little team dinner that we have with the big noon crew on Fox on Friday night. I think I have something going on with the Superbook as well. So I don't think there's going to be a game day reunion dinner per se, but I would love to be able to just to catch up with Coach and just say hi for me, even if it's like, "Coach, where are you staying?" I'd love to just swing by the lobby on the way to the set for you and just say hi and give you a hug, because I mean, who knows how many more opportunities I'm going to get to see those guys in the same location. But yeah, Coach is the one guy I definitely want to just kind of say hi to.
I was dialed into Big Noon Kickoff last couple of weeks. You guys have been very much rewarded for going all in with Colorado. We were talking about that a little bit before we came on, which again, that's where you guys are going to be this weekend. But from the gambling side, I'm wondering how in the world to approach this, because even the odds makers are kind of looking at this and they seem a bit stumped. So I want to dig into a couple of these different things from that perspective. On one of the sites that I visit, they have their own Colorado tab. Like that's how big,
Yep.
that's how big the interest is with them. Are you betting in favor of Colorado and the weekly lines until they slow down?
I week one, I was kind of taking the like everyone was kind of piling on. Well, worst rosters stink, and I basically said, look, I don't know what way this is going to go because it's something we've never seen before. We've seen like rosters get overhauled, we've seen coaching staffs come in, but we've never seen just a complete program shift. And it was clear that they did bring in some players, and like I kind of got a sense that the staff that they brought in with Sean Lewis and Charles Kelly, like they have a good coaching staff. I was like, they're probably going to score a bunch of points. And they're probably going to give up a bunch of points based on the depth probably being an issue. So week one, I wasn't like running out there to lay 21 with TCU because, like, look, TCU was a lot closer to being an 8-4 team than I think last year, then people want to buy into that whole, defending runner-up reached the title game last year. Like, this is not the same TCU team. And my play in that game was like the TCU team total. I was like, they're going to score points on Colorado, and they did get there. But no, I did not have any of the line. I will say last week, I had the under in the game because I thought Nebraska would kind of slow that game down, and I didn't think they turned it over much. And then I did get to Nebraska +3 once it did hit 3 on the show. But and that looked okay for a while. It very easily could have been a scoreless game at halftime, but then the turnovers came and it just went downhill for Nebraska. So this week I'm kind of in a wait and see approach because and I don't think like this Colorado roster is like, rivalry game, Colorado State, we're going to run out there and beat the boys from Fort Collins. I think if you look at like last week, emotional home opener, week before you go to TCU and win. Next week you go to Eugene for a massive Pac-12 game, and then you got SC the week after that. Like, if it were like any other like established power, like this would be an absolute bet against. But I don't think Deion Sanders is wired that way. I don't think his kids are wired that way, especially his son Shadur and Travis Hunter as well. Like this isn't really a game I want any part of. I'm going to wait and see how. Look, they're not going to lose. So if you get a big money line price and you want to throw it in a parlay, you could do that. Colorado State with the backup quarterback coming in this week as well. But I think bettors are going to be curious to see what happens should they move to 3-0 in an impressive fashion, because next week when they go to Eugene and face by far the best defense that they're going to have faced in the season, and a Heisman quarterback of their own in Bo Nix, and a team that very easily could wind up winning the Pac-12 this year, that's going to be the game where I think a lot of pro bettors and so-called sharp bettors are going to be curious to see if the 3-0 and top number 12 or whatever Colorado will be ranked, if they tend to get maybe a reduced number on Colorado. But I can see that line next week is going to be very fascinating to see if the Colorado love affair continues and that number gets bet down, or if people are going to say, you know what, this is where the streak ends and Oregon gets steamed up. So it's definitely an interesting couple of weeks coming up.
They're still only 7th in the odds to win the Pac-12, 25-1. And I think some of that is just because Pac-12 looks really good. And the Pac-12 has really performed well in non-conference play. And you haven't played any of these conference games yet. So it's not like you've already gone into Oregon if you won a game like that. Are those odds tempting at all? Or would that be a stay away? Even at 25-1, that's not worth it.
No, I wouldn't play that, because I think if you look at the depth of the Pac-12 and the schedule, being that you've got to go to Oregon, you got USC, you got UCLA, and then finish up with road games, you got Wazoo and Utah. Like they're not going to get there. But I think the interesting bet would be, for me, and I'd love to get your opinions on this. Like there are like Bryant Coach of the Year awards out there. Like usually you need to be a 10-win team to be the National Coach of the Year. But say they beat Colorado State for 3. They beat Arizona State for 4. They beat Stanford for 5. They beat Arizona for 6. And then maybe they somehow win one. Maybe they beat Oregon State, or maybe they beat Wazoo and they get to 7. Like, that's a bet I might want to take, because I think if they get to 7-5, or even if they just get to 6-6 and get to a bowl, you look at the impact that Colorado had on the sport. That became the biggest story in at least the early part of the season. You had 2 unbelievably talented players in Sanders and Travis Hunter, and I mentioned Dylan Edwards. Like that'll be an interesting conversation to have, and that's something I never would have thought. Yes, a 6-6 coach is going to win Coach of the Year, but that might be in these Colorado future markets. That would be the one that I think I will be most interested in betting.
And think about this too, and I bring this up on the pod all the time, so people are probably sick of hearing me say this, but their one bowl season in the last 15 years, Mike McIntyre cleaned up National Coach of the Year awards that year, and they were like 10-2, I think, in the regular season. They got smoked in the Pac-12 championship games. Like, if Deion goes 8-4 in year one with that roster overhaul, knowing what that task was, like, I think that's very much on the table that he could be winning. I didn't realize that you could get in on that. And that's That makes sense though, because it's going to be one of those things where it's all about perception. You're still
Mhm.
going to have to beat teams down the stretch here that people don't think that you should beat. We're going to adjust our expectations, and that's what goes into all of this. But you brought up Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, their Heisman odds. Shadeur's sitting there at 30-1. Travis Hunter's at 50-1. Do you like the value of either of those, or do you think the window is kind of closed on that?
I do like the value in those, but I do think the biggest thing that they have going against, well, two things going against them. Number one, being on the same team, and how does the vote get split?
Yep.
Like, I would tend to think voters would lean towards the quarterback, but at the same time, if Travis Hunter is going to be playing 70 snaps a game or whatever it might be, and he has X number of yards and he has 6 interceptions and maybe a defensive touch, like that might be hard to ignore as well. And then the other thing that I think is working against them now is the fact that Texas beat Alabama and they went to Tuscaloosa and won. And I think Quinn Ewers is now a very real candidate because he certainly showed, as did that entire team in that win, just the ability to take a punch and come back. And he made the plays that he didn't necessarily do last year at times, and certainly in week one when they got off to a slow start. So I think the fact that Texas won at Alabama and now Ewers is front and center, along with like kind of how will the voters handle Shedeur and Travis Hunter, like I think those are dynamics that might work against one of those guys winning.
Who'd you have in the preseason as the guy that you really liked for their Heisman odds?
I actually made one Heisman bet in the preseason because my assumption all along was that Caleb Williams was not going to win it 2 years in a row. So I was looking for a second. And everybody obviously, there's Kate Klubnik love out there. There was Jordan
Jaden
Travis
Daniels.
love out there. And I'm an LSU under guy, so I was not there with that. Like I went way down the board, and I actually bet Connor Wegman at 65-1. Thinking
Ooh.
that with Petrino in there, that offense could be really good with Stewart and an experienced offensive line. And then you go to Miami last week, and they were an absolute dumpster fire. So I little bit of pizza money on fire there. But unfortunately in the state of Connecticut, I can't open my DraftKings app right now and bet a national title pick or a Heisman pick because these things vary state to state. So once I get out to New York and once I get out to Colorado and states that you're actually able to do it, I'm gonna look through and see maybe what Quinn Ewers is as well, and what some other the national title odds might be, because I do think for the first time in a while, like this is not like Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, or not even Michigan, and everybody. Like I think you can go deeper and throw Texas in. You could throw Florida State in. Maybe Oklahoma upsets to I bet Oklahoma at 60-1 to win the title because I thought the Big 12 was a conference where there was going to be a lot of high variance, and we've seen Baylor win the conference. We've seen TCU get to the playoff with Kansas State winning the conference. Iowa State nearly won the conference. So, like, you've had a lot of high variance with Oklahoma and all those close losses last year and what they had coming back. I thought, like, if they get to the playoff, and I'm holding 60-1, I mean, that's a pretty good ticket to grind out a profit on. So, like, I think there actually are, for the first time in a while, like, legitimate national title contenders outside of Georgia, and Georgia might be priced too short right now. We'll see. I mean, they don't have a regular season game until Tennessee that I think is really going to challenge them. But what happens in that SEC title game if they have to play Alabama, who's improved by then, or LSU maybe if they get their act together, or A&M suddenly figures it out. So it'll be very curious. Like, I think Georgia is the safest bet to make the playoff, but are they going to beat two other top 5 teams to win a third straight title? We'll see.
I want to go back to the A&M Miami game because I loved what I saw from Connor Wigman, and I defended him on the recap pod and thought like he did so many things really well in that game that makes me think this offense is actually turning the corner with Bobby Petrino. But obviously, you've got to have a certain record probably to be able to win the Heisman, and if they're going to be an 8-4 team, that task is really, really difficult for him. I'm kind of surprised you didn't talk about, as a Miami guy, you didn't talk about Tyler Van Dyke sitting there at 40-1 right now. Some of the throws he was making, man, I was like, dang, this redemption arc for him, it's absolutely there. 40-1 for him is that intriguing at all? Like if Miami is one of those 9-3 type seasons, is that in play?
9-3, I don't think will be good enough because that probably doesn't put them in the ACC championship game because they do have Florida State on the schedule. They do have Clemson on the schedule as well, and they got to go to North Carolina. But like if they're 10-2 when they get in, yeah, that certainly is doable. And I think it was great to see because I had my questions about was last year the aberration because the coordinator change, or was it just kind of 2 years ago was a fluke? And I think what we saw last week, I think it showed his relationship with Shannon Dawson and the Jacoby, the receiver as well, that they've turned a little bit of a corner. And I think the offensive line is showing a little bit of nastiness for the first time in a long time. And I think you credit Mario Cristobal for that, being a proud Miami offensive lineman alum. That was a unit that kind of had been seen as soft and given it terrible pass protection the last couple of years. And for Mario, I think he's grown as a coach now. I think going back to his days at Oregon, like one of the knocks against him was meddling too much in the offense. Let the offensive coordinators do their job, call their plays. And I think there were people last year that thought maybe that's what was going on again with Josh Gaddis. And obviously there were changes at both coordinators last year with Guidry coming in as well. But I think we saw the trust that not only Mario Cristobal has in Shannon Dawson, but that Tyler Van Dyke does as well. So as a Miami alum, this is as optimistic and hopeful as I am that like the program has changed for the first time in a long time. And if you want to factor A&M as well, like how are you feeling today if you are an A&M fan where they basically had like a 4-year start on Miami with the recruiting cycle and a new coach and NIL money and transfer portal. And like Mario comes in year 2 and they hung up basically a 50 burger on him with basically 1 year of kind of reshaping everything. So I think A&M is, those fans are probably rightfully like frazzled right now and frustrated as to why they can't seem to turn the corner.
It's college football hell is what they're in. There are a few teams that are in. I did a segment on it in the offseason, and A&M is firmly in that. And by the way, I can definitely confirm Mario meddling a little bit too much in the offense. I've heard that from one of his former coordinators. We'll just say that. We're living in a world in which it's mid-September and Bama is 9th in the national championship odds. And the SEC championship odds are like plus 325 or something like that. So really not much of a change there after the Texas loss, because obviously that's non-conference. But is there a long-term play with Bama that makes any sense? Or do you just kind of treat them like a week-to-week deal because the quarterback situation is so unsettled? Like it's hard to have faith in any one thing unless it's maybe you're just saying, hey, I'm just going against the grain. And I'm just going to bet against Bama because there's still enough life there to be able to do that.
I think that what happened on Saturday was not an aberration. I think Texas was the better team on that field. If you go position, but you go front seven, you go quarterback, you go receivers, like there was no doubt that Texas was the better team. And if you look at the Alabama remaining schedule, like the fact that they get Tennessee and LSU at home, they do have to go to A&M, but we just got through A&M. We don't know what the heck is going to happen there. Like you said, that was it plus 325 to win the SEC. That's what the price was.
Yep.
Like that's probably still worth the bet because if you get to the SEC title game, you'll be 11-1 or 10-2, depending on what type of tie breaks play out. If they do happen to drop another one, like will Georgia be bigger than a $3 favorite on the money line to win that game? Like, I think that's the question you need to ask, because if you can lock Alabama in at plus money to win the SEC and then Georgia does make it and then say they're only laying 260 or whatever on the money line, you have yourself a nice little scalp there and you're in a win-win situation. So like, I think Alabama plus 325 is still worth the play because I think the youth of this team as the year goes on, I think they will continue to get better. But like, I'm not convinced that Texas isn't the best team they're going to face all year long until if and when they do play Georgia.
I don't want to put you on the spot too much here, but and if you don't have a read on these games as we record this on Wednesday morning,
Mhm.
that's perfectly fine. But two lines that I think are really, really interesting looking at the slate this week. Kansas State, only a 4.5 point favorite at Mizzou. Obviously, Kansas State dominated that matchup last year. A little bit weird with the rain delay, but still, it was very lopsided. And Iowa's a 28.5 point favorite against Western Michigan, who I realized like Western Michigan just couldn't stop anything against Syracuse, but still, I mean, huge game for the Brian Ferentz drive to 325 and all that stuff. You could pick either one of those games, or maybe there's another spread that you jumped all over early in the week to kind of break down.
Yeah, that Missouri Kansas State game does seem very low because I know there are a lot of Missouri fans who are very upset with like they're undefeated, but like they know they haven't looked very good. But that number is very low, um, which would kind of set off sirens in my head. Like I don't know if I want to necessarily get involved with K State Missouri. And it's not like it's a look ahead game or anything, or sad because get UCF next week, and UCF without Plumlee is certainly not the same opponent. Yeah, the Iowa, I just don't know if Western Michigan is going to be able to score any points in Iowa. That's of those two games, I would be inclined to lay the points with the Hawkeyes. I know they go to Penn State next week, but again, I don't think this is a vintage Western Michigan team that's going to be one of those contenders in the MAC that's going to be running up and down the field, scoring a bunch of points. I mean, they got absolutely blown out at Syracuse last year in the Orange last week rather, and the Orange put I think 45-7 or something like that. So I just would trust the Iowa defense to probably keep Western Michigan in to 10 points or fewer, and I would think that at some point that McNamara and the offense will be able to figure it out. But yes, I would think they're. And I was funny. I'm glad you brought it up because I brought this up on our production call the other day. Like at some point, like how does the play calling change? Like this is a game that they need to put up 40, 50 points in order to give themselves some leeway once they get into the Big Ten play. So this probably would be that game. I'm curious to see what the betting splits and the talking heads ultimately talk about this game. If this is one of those where a lot of people are seeing the same thing, but I don't necessarily have a game that stands out to me right now. But I think there's still some things that it's still college football, and I think if you clump a bunch of games together, you look at ranked teams on the road on a conference game. Florida State's at BC. BC's terrible, but it could be really miserable weather in the Northeast this week. Penn State goes to Illinois. Look at Penn State's first road game the last couple of years. Survived against Purdue last year, survived against Wisconsin the year before that. The COVID year, they lost that game to Indiana. So, like, their first road game has been a problem for them. LSU goes to Mississippi State, and that's never a bargain. Tennessee goes to Florida, and we think Florida's down, and Graham Mertz isn't like good, and this Gator team has issues, but they're still conference road games. They're all teams that are favored by at least a touchdown. So it would not surprise me if a couple of those underdogs are a little bit more frisky than a lot of people think, because they just say, oh, ranked team, unranked team, no issue. But you and I have been following college football long enough to know that is definitely not the case. And certainly when you get into conference play, things can certainly change. You can get a lot of upsets.
Love a home dog in conference play. Always attractive. I'm just like, oh God, they're getting 9.5. Like, come on. That's just so unbelievably tempting. Last thing for you. I just want to say I'm sorry. I don't have a lot of Jets fans in my life. Man, like you talk about being in college football hell. NFL hell is having to watch Zach Wilson be your starting quarterback every single week. But just for your sake, just don't maybe think about the fact that your team could have had Jamar Chase or Patrick Surtain or Micah Parsons. Just don't think about that. It's not worth it.
When I tweeted out the top 12 or 13 of the draft yesterday, I definitely was in like the anger stage of the stages of grief yesterday morning. And people, oh yeah, you say that now. No, I was saying it at the time. If you want to go back to like pre-2021 draft, and look at my comments and everything, like I was all in on Penei Sewell is who I wanted the Jets to take, because at the time the offensive line was terrible. And yeah, they would have had a decision to make a quarterback, but like I was not in on Zach Wilson in heading into that draft. Like 1 year in a COVID type season where he made this massive improvement with the on offensive line that was like 4 years older than the opponents they were playing, against this makeshift schedule of not necessarily great teams. Like I was not there, and it's one of the situations where I hated being right. But it was funny. I know on the Bear Bets podcast last week, I love the Jets plus 2.5 in the game, and I was like just saying how this is excited as I am about a Jets team, and a lot like we made the biggest quarterback upgrade ever from Zach Wilson and Mike White to Aaron Rodgers. Like the defense is going to be so good, and like they have a legit chance this year. And this is excited as I've been since 1999. So this is setting up for massive disappointment, because a quarter into the 99 season, the season was over when Vinny Testaverde ruptured his Achilles against the Patriots, and it was all downhill from there. And I didn't expect to see what we saw on Monday night, and basically the same exact injury, even shorter into the game than we did in '99. But yeah, it's hell. I mean, to have it be a year of looking forward to this, you're excited, and then after 4 plays. But that being said, you know what? I was so happy that they won, because the defense played their what off, and they deserved that. They deserve to be happy for that night at least. And now when you go to Dallas on Sunday and you've got to throw Zach Wilson to that defense behind that offensive line, that'll be a different story. But I was very happy to see them did win. And one of my buddies, who's a lifelong Jets fan like I am, basically I tweeted something out, a text that he sent, and it was dead on. Like for on the night where they finally broke us for good emotionally, to a point where we can't take it anymore, they showed one of like the most high character wins and performances they ever have. And oh, by the way, Zach Wilson stinks. So,
they just get you back. That's what being a fan is all about.
It's funny too. I don't want to go into like Jets backup quarterback talk here with you, but it's so funny. Like people talk like it doesn't matter. The season's over. Like you're the same team you were last year now, because offensively you have the same problem. You don't have a quarterback. So, oh well.
It'll be okay. Yeah. On the bright side,
the Canes are back though, right?
Yeah, sure. Totally. Look, that's all that matters right now. Canes are back. They're at least back to not being a total doormat. You've got a great job. Yeah, life is good, man. You're going to spend some more time in your new home, Boulder, Colorado. Like life is good. Yeah. It could be a whole lot worse. Just tell yourself the NFL season's already over. That's better.
I will. And it was funny. I joked and I said, boy, what a great opening weekend. Texas Tech was never the wrong side, and I wound up losing them. I wound up losing my big survivor pick with the Seahawks, and then I lost my team's quarterback for the year on Monday night. So it was a great Saturday, Sunday, Monday, just absolute triple header of football awfulness. So only one way to go up from here, right? It's up.
It's amen. Look, life will get a lot better, I'm sure. Bear, you're the best, man. Really, really appreciate it. Looking forward to watching this weekend, and I'll have you back on. We'll discuss the rest of seasons 6 through 9 of The Office.
Absolutely.